Welcome to the Church Sound Podcast, part of the Repurpose Network, where kingdom culture, real life, and technology intersect. I'm your host, Prentiss Thompson, and what we do? We talk to real people, pastors, leaders, engineers, tech people, manufacturers, worship leaders, all about church, technology, and provide solutions for a successful Sunday morning service. You ready? It's time to take a ride. Let's go. Yes, and welcome to another edition of the Church Sound. Oh man, listen to you guys. I say this every week. You guys encourage me, even though I do it myself. Welcome to another edition of the Church Sound Podcast. I'm your humble host, Mr. Prentiss Thompson. What we do every week is try to provide practical information that's going to help your church have an amazing Sunday morning service. Making sure that the information that we give is practical, that it's applicable, and that you can use it immediately. That's the key. So, why I got your ear, why you're listening, why don't you like, subscribe, share, review, leave a comment. And if you have a question, just hit us up, the Church Sound Podcast at Gmail, the Church Sound Podcast at Gmail. Send it to your media team. Send it to a pastor's friend, or whoever. This information is to help use technology to bring souls to the kingdom, because we can't escape technology. Last time I checked, the phone we have ain't even a phone no more. Ain't even a phone no more. Welcome aboard. I'm so glad that you're here. And I'm excited because the information that I give, that I provide, I pray about it. I ask God for direction. So I know that if I'm saying this is for someone specifically or a group of churches. My heart is for the small church, even though all the information can be applied to any size church. But usually the churches with the least amount of staff, or 9 times out of 10, no staff, just volunteers, need this information. So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to tackle a big question. It's a big question that every tech member has, that every pastor has, that every parishioner has, that every church mother has. This is the question. How loud is too loud? How loud is too loud? So it doesn't make a difference whether you're running sound at a small chapel or a mega church. Getting the right loudness is so critical, because it's two sides to every coin. If it's too quiet, you lose engagement. If it's too loud, it ends up being distracting, discomforting, or even harmful. So today, this is what I'm going to do. We're going to break down 5 key areas to help you find that sweet spot in your worship service. So let's get into this. Number 1, you have to understand loudness levels. Loudness levels, or should I say decibels. And it's abbreviated with dB. So we're talking about how loud something is, and we're usually referring to it in a measurement of decibels, right? It tells you how loud or how soft a sound is. For most churches, an average worship service should be between 80 and 95 dB, which usually gives you good enough range of energy to fill the room without it being completely overwhelming the congregation. Because it's important that it's not sustained exposure above 85 for long periods of time. And this will definitely harm someone's hearing. It's not even a maybe. No, it will harm someone's hearing. Let me tell you something. I remember being in a recording studio with a friend of mine, and I never forget how loud the room was and how unaffected he was. I was sitting there, I had things in my ears and I was covering my ears. He was acting like nothing was wrong. About maybe 5 or 6 years later, I started to notice that I had to say things to him 3 and 4 times. The exposure to that high volume affected his hearing. So imagine that on a long period of time on your audience or on your parishioners or on your church family. That's how I would phrase it, on your church family. This is what I do. I have a dB meter. I keep it with me at all times so I'll know how loud things are. Another thing I'll do, on my phone, I have a dB and an RTA on my phone to be able to, and most times they are free. So they're great apps that are free, and I'll have a list of them in the notes that you can use. But you want to know how loud things are. You don't want to not know, because knowledge is power. And if you understand the loudness level, the optimum loudness level of your service, then you know that you're in a comfortable spot. And the only way to know that, you have to measure it. You have to measure your sound and your decibel level. Here's number 2. It's your church size and acoustics. Your church size and your acoustics will affect your loudness. Because here's the thing, the size of your church directly impacts how sound behaves. If it's a small chapel with low ceilings and hard walls, it will reflect sound differently than a large sanctuary with high ceilings and sound absorbing materials. Now, we went over that a few weeks ago about treatment, acoustic treatment. But if you're in a smaller space, loudness is going to build up quickly because there's less room for the sound to dissipate. In larger spaces, you might have more volume to ensure that the sound reaches the back row. But you have to be careful. You have to compensate to making sure that it's not distorted and you don't have listener fatigue. I remember one time I was mixing at a church service. It was they had rented out like a amphitheater. It was like maybe 15,000 people. And I remember that the church didn't hang the speakers. And what happens is you have to make sure the sound gets to the back row. So what did the church do? The thing that you should never do. You need to hang them, but they were like, no, we need to save money. We're not going to hang them. So that means that the speakers that were directly on the stage were pointing directly at the first 15 rows. So you can imagine at a church, the reserved seating is where? Yeah, in the front. So what happened? All of a sudden, here come ushers and deacons. Hey, you need to turn it down because people in the front can't hear. I looked up at the balcony. I said, the people up there, if I turn it down, they can't hear. So what do you want me to do? You want me to turn it down? Or you want to move the seats back or remove the people from the seats and maybe sit them on the sides so this way everyone can hear? You got to make a choice. So because sound travels And if you have a big place, what does that mean? That means the sound has to reach the back row. So you have to, if you're on a larger side, you have to invest in proper sound treatment, acoustic panels, diffusers. These things will help you manage reflections. For smaller spaces, I would just focus on balancing the frequencies to avoid the hot spots or the really, really boomy areas that can happen very, very quickly. So how do you do that? You have to run your system and test it. You have to test it with people in the room and the room empty, because your room's going to sound different with people in the room, especially if it's all spaces, but especially smaller spaces, because people will absorb the sound. So let me ask you this question. This is number 3. This is a question. What do you think is the role of the congregation demographics? What do you think the role is of the congregation demographic? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about who's in the seats. Let's talk about the instrumentation. Let's talk about how many instruments, style of music. Your congregation demographics matter when it comes to setting your volume levels. For example, if you have a younger audience, your worship is going to be louder. Your worship style is going to be different. If you have older members, they may find those same loud levels extremely uncomfortable. Accessibility is another consideration. Members with hearing challenges, they may struggle to hear the spoken word if the music is too loud, if there's too much bass drowning out clarity. Let's not even mention cultural differences. Some worship traditions embrace vibrant, high energy, while others lean toward more subdued levels. How do you make this decision? How do you make the distinction? I remember mixing, I always bring up my personal illustrations here, but I remember mixing at church, and Coco from SWV was she had a gospel album out at the time, and I was mixing in front of the house. And in this church, they had the subs. They flew the subs, which means that the subs were not on the floor. The subs were in the sky. Well, your subs are in the sky, you can't feel it on the floor. And this wasn't that type of a church where they had a young, vibrant congregation. It was an older congregation. It was more subdued, like I said earlier. She immediately, her songs were a little, and rightfully so, it was a little boomy. It was dope. But she's like, turn it up. But the place wasn't equipped for that. The system wasn't equipped for that. And what ended up happening was it started to sound distorted, so I had to bring it down. I had to give her more on her monitor so she could hear. But these are the differences when you talk about cultural differences. Is your church a shouting church? You know, does your church have a B3, 2 keyboard players, two guitar players, a bass player, a drummer, no cage, percussionist? Does your stage have 5 wedges, or is it all in-ears? Does your praise and worship team just use the front wedges and the band have in-ears? Does everyone have in-ears? All of these things factor in to how loud the sanctuary is, one, and how loud the stage is. Because if your stage is loud in a small area, small church, your room is super loud, you have no way to understand what the balance is. That's why communication is key. You have to survey the congregation periodically. You have to have open discussions with your ministry leaders just to to the feedback of what's working and what is not. It's very, very important. How loud is too loud? It's not a trick question. It's a real question. Here's number 4. Balancing worship atmosphere and technical excellence. Now let's keep it real. Or should I, what we say in Harlem, let's keep it a bean. Let's keep it a buck. Worship is supposed to feel impactful. You want the congregation to feel the music in their bones, in their heart, in their soul, because that's what it's worship. But here's the challenge. How do you maintain energy without crossing the line? How do you maintain energy without crossing the line? But it starts with one key word. It's called collaboration. And it's called collaboration between all 3 departments. This is what I mean by all 3 departments. Your worship team and your worship leader, the tech team, pastoral team. And why would I add the pastoral team? Let me tell you the reasons why. But say your church, your pastor is a hooper. Say your pastor likes 15-inch wedges on stage and it's a small space. How do you talk to him to say, hey, listen, these are too big for this space. I think it would be better if we were to go down to 10s and maybe angle them a little different and maybe change the mic. Because it starts with collaboration. What if your worship leader doesn't like in-ears or refuse to try them? It's called collaboration. What if your engineer is a jerk? And I say it just like that because we all are human. You run into one of these people who refuse to change anything. They refuse to collaborate. They refuse to negotiate. If you're going to balance worship atmosphere and technical excellence, you have to have collaboration. Everyone needs to be on the same page. If the music team wants a certain atmosphere, like a upbeat praise song, that's fine. It's up to the sound team to ensure that it's not overwhelming. Not the musicians. Not the singers. It's the driver of the car. You have tools. We have tools like volume automation. We have tools like EQ. We have tools like compression. These are tools we use to clarify and balance every instrument, every vocal, every spoken word, that we want it to be clear without overpowering the others. Without overpowering the others. It's very, very important that we come to the same page and say that, hey, listen, this space is echoey. Pastors, leaders, what can we do? Can we get some sound absorption in here, some diffusion in here? Can we call somebody in here, a acustician, to help us with this? Can we remove the wedges? Maybe we can't afford in-ears, but maybe wireless in-ears, but can we get the band wired in-ears and put them on the same bus? It's a lot of ways you can work around it, but at the end of the day, you don't want it to be too loud, because this is the question. How loud is too loud? Now, number 5 is kind of the way I've been going the whole time. Number 5 is this: tools and techniques for monitoring and managing loudness. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Your dB meter is your best friend. But this is the thing. That is just the start. You have to consider using real-time sound monitoring systems to give you a visual readout of volume levels. These tools help you stay consistent throughout the service. You need to set up a sound policy for your team. This is a document that outlines safe volume thresholds for different parts of the service, whether it's praise and worship, whether it's sermon, whether it's prayer time, whether it's the type of service, whether it's a youth service, whether it's choir, whether it's praise and worship, whether it's acoustic. You have to have a document that outlines safe volume thresholds. Because what you want is consistency. Every time someone comes into your sanctuary more than once, they're going to be comparing it to a previous time. I went there, it was loud. I went there, it was loud. I went there, and it was this way. Oh, it was good this Sunday. Oh, I don't know who was up there. You want it consistent. I often say this all the time. I want to duplicate myself. I don't need to be the coup de grace. I don't need to be the top dog. I need the service to be consistent. Because if you operate that way, you'll never go on vacation because you'll be the only person that can do it. So what does that mean? That means you cannot forget training. You have to make sure your sound team knows how to use the tools and understand the why behind your sound decisions. The why behind your sound decisions, which means you have to explain it to them along the way. You know, while I'm mixing, I'm checking the meter. I'm checking the meter. I'm looking. I know through a certain point of the service at the church I mix at consistently, the pastor does not have in-ears and they do not have wedges on the stage. And on top of that, he's a musician, a classically trained musician, and he's a sound guy. He knows how the room sounds from the stage. So I'm dealing with someone who has educational background in sound and how it should sound. He can tell if it's too loud, if it's smacking off the back wall. I have my dB meter set at 65. The space has 563 seats. I do not push it past 65. 65 is comfortable. During service, it's 80, 85. So you have to understand the why behind the sound decisions. And you have to teach your team the same exact way. The same exact way. So let me recap. Number one, you have to understand your loudness levels and your dB. So make sure you have a meter or you get some software on a free app. Number two, how church size and acoustics will affect your loudness. Number three, the role of your church demographics. Number four, balancing worship and atmosphere and technical excellence. What does that mean? Collaboration. How all parties collaborate. And lastly, your tools and techniques for monitoring and managing loudness. We have to make sure that the experience that people get is consistent. What I always say is, it doesn't matter what button you press. It doesn't matter what fader you slide. It doesn't matter what button you click on. It doesn't matter how many lights or what images you have behind the screen. It doesn't matter. What matters is Everything we do is to bring souls to the kingdom. That's why we're here. That is why we're here. So, before we get out here, here's what I want you to do. Would you consider reviewing and sharing the episode? Share it with a church that you know. If you're a parishioner, share it with your team members. Share it with your leaders. Because we want to make sure that everything is comfortable, where it's loud, but it's loud enough. It's loud, but it's loud enough. Your church size, your congregation, your volume setting, all these things play into it. We want to make sure that the information that I'm giving you, you can apply immediately. So like, subscribe, review, and share. That's what I want you to do. I'm thanking all of you guys for tuning in. We're in over 50 countries now. Do you believe that? Hey, listen, say it like I always say. Keep God first in everything you do. And I'll see you next time on the Church Sound Podcast. God bless.